Have you ever met someone who just commands a room? Someone who, without even trying, seems to pull people toward them? What if that wasn't just charm, but a real, trainable, almost scientific force? Well, today, we're cracking open a guide from over a century ago that promises to teach exactly that: how to unlock a hidden personal power to become, well, irresistible. Okay, let's get into it. So, our guide for this journey is this really interesting book from 1914 called The Advanced Course in Personal Magnetism by an author named Theron Q. Dumont. Now, this isn't your typical modern self-help book. This is a window into how people over 100 years ago thought about the art of influence, way before things like social media were even a glimmer in someone's eye.
And the book kicks off with a pretty huge question, which is really its central promise. What if you could actually develop a real force inside of you, an energy that doesn't just make you successful, but makes you genuinely irresistible to the people you meet? I know, it sounds a little like science fiction, but Dumont was convinced it was a learnable science.
All right, so to figure out this science, here's our game plan. First, we're going to try to define this unseen force. Then we'll look at where it comes from, your powerful inner mind. After that, we'll get into the practical stuff, cultivating a magnetic personality, applying it in love and business, and we'll wrap up with the book's very important rules of power. Okay, first things first. What exactly is this personal magnetism? Dumont describes it as this mysterious yet totally real force. Let's take a look at how he actually defined it. So, according to Dumont, personal magnetism is this invisible atmosphere that you carry around with you. It's a quality that a camera could never capture, a sculptor couldn't recreate it, but it has this very real, very powerful influence on everyone you meet. For him, this was the secret ingredient for success. And Dumont himself puts it this way: although it cannot be seen, nor really described, personal magnetism is a tremendous power. He really believed it was this potent, invisible force that anyone could learn to harness. So, if it's so powerful, where the heck does it come from? So, where does this force originate? Well, the book argues it's not magic. It comes from a place that we all have access to, our own minds, but maybe not the part of the mind you're thinking of. Dumont basically splits the mind in two. You've got your conscious mind, which is what you use for everyday logic, reasoning, making lists, but the real powerhouse, he says, is the inner mind, what we today would probably call the subconscious. This is where all your memories and past experiences live, and according to this book, it's the true engine of all your personal power. He puts it really bluntly: the inner mind is what makes a man. It is the real secret of success. So the big takeaway here is that developing this magnetism isn't about faking it on the surface. It's about fundamentally reprogramming that deeper, more powerful part of yourself. And how are you supposed to do that? Well, the method is actually surprisingly modern. First, you have to truly, deeply believe in yourself and this inner power. Second, you use constant self-suggestion, affirmations like "I am power" or "I will succeed." And third, and this is the interesting part, you don't just ask your inner mind for success, you demand it with total confidence. You're basically giving your subconscious a direct order to make you magnetic.
Okay, so let's say you've started training your inner mind. Now what? How do you make sure all that inner power is actually projected outward? This next part is all about, as the book says, polishing the instrument of your personality.
Dumont breaks it down into three really practical pillars. First, developing a magnetic voice, one that's clear and has some life in it. Second, having pleasing manners and tact. And third, maintaining a good personal appearance. He basically argues that while we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, pretty much everyone does. And he gives a very clear do's and don'ts list. He says the things to avoid are stuff like sarcasm, a hot temper, or just general roughness. On the flip side, what you want to cultivate are things like self-control, politeness, cheerfulness, and tact. It's all about consciously choosing behaviors that pull people in instead of pushing them away. And here's the fundamental reason why. Dumont writes, "The man who keeps himself under control commands our respect and confidence. Such a man is well fitted to control others." So in his view, mastering yourself is the absolute first step to being able to influence anybody else. So you've built up this internal power, you've polished your external personality. Where do you actually apply all this? Well, Dumont really zeroes in on the two big arenas of life: business and love. Now, in the world of business, Dumont makes a really bold claim. He says a magnetic personality is actually a greater asset than having a ton of money.
He argues that someone with this powerful magnetism can get a loan, win over partners, and close deals way more easily than a rich person with a terrible personality. It's the ultimate form of social capital. Now, when it comes to relationships, this is where you can really tell the book is from a different time. This quote is a perfect example. Many a wife has made a great man out of her husband, when without her, he would have been a very ordinary individual indeed. For Dumont, magnetism was this incredibly powerful, even life-changing force within a marriage. And the advice for winning affection is, as you can imagine, very specific to the gender roles of that era. To be magnetic, a man had to be a manly man who was respectful, while a woman had to be a womanly woman with dignity. He even advises that for a wife to hold on to her husband's affection, she has to maintain the same appearance and modesty after marriage as she did before. It's just a fascinating look into the social expectations of the time. But the book doesn't just hand over all these secrets without a word of caution. The very last section is actually a stark and pretty serious warning about the responsibility that comes with having this kind of power. So after teaching you how to influence people, how to be successful, how to win affection, Dumont delivers what he considers to be his single most important rule. And here it is, right from the author's foreword. You must never attempt to use your power to further anything that is dishonest. This is the core ethical rule. The power of magnetism, he insists, is for building things up, not for manipulation or for being deceitful. And yeah, there are consequences. Dumont warns that if you ignore this rule, you will attract penalties in exact proportion to the wrongs you have done. It's basically an early version of the law of attraction, or karma, right? What you put out into the world, good or bad, is gonna come back to you.
And that really brings us to our final thought. Once you strip away the old-fashioned language and the social norms of 1914, what are we really left with? Are these 100-year-old secrets of personal magnetism just another name for what we talk about today? Things like confidence, positive thinking, and the importance of self-presentation. Maybe the science of becoming irresistible has always been the same, just dressed up in different clothes.